and that is Edgerrin Cooper out of Texas A&M. So he is the number 2 linebacker on the PFF big board. Cedric Gray was number 9 for those that aren't aware, but Edgerrin Cooper, number 2 on the big board, 6'3", 230 pounds. Really good at beating those second level blocks with speed and putting himself into position before blockers get hands on him. And it's a huge part of his game against the run. He's aggressive. Again, another guy like that, it puts himself in good position to make plays. And more often than not, he does, right? He obviously, like any linebacker who's playing a ton of snaps each game is going to have snaps where he's locked up, but much more often than not, he knows how to avoid those second level blockers and things like that and get in a good position. I thought he had really good technique as a tackler as well. Like, yeah, he misses tackles, but they all do. We'll talk about it. There's a lot of guys here who have missed tackle problems every year, right? But it's at least been something that he's cleaned up every year. And the way that he, wraps guys up and brings them down, you could tell that he's worked on it and improved quite a bit already in that regard. So not necessarily like a rangy sideline to sideline player, much more of a kind of between the tackles Mike type linebacker, which is fine. Those guys work just fine for IDP purposes. On passing downs, I noticed they often utilize him as kind of like a spy, right? They keep him close to the line of scrimmage, and a lot of his pressures and sacks actually come from that like spy role more than like typical pass rush snaps where he just sees that opening, has the green light, and then goes for it. He had 27 pressures and 10 sacks in 2023. So nice numbers there from Cooper. As far as coverage goes, not a linebacker that was asked to drop into coverage or carry tight ends down the seam or anything like that. So there's not like a ton of sample of him as a coverage linebacker, which I think speaks a bit just at how the team chose to deploy him and potentially play to his strengths by keeping him in that spy or pass rusher role on pass downs. But he had an 85.5 coverage grade this past year. A number of those big plays are, technically coverage first because he's playing spy and then ends up pass rushing or making a play around the line of scrimmage because that's just kind of where he lives. But I thought that was really promising for me, is that when he was, or what I thought was really promising was that when he was asked to drop into coverage more in 2022, for example, he was actually really good at breaking up passes and playing that true coverage linebacker role, which wasn't as common for him in 2023. So he's certainly at least capable of it based on the tape, but not something I found them asking him to do a lot in 2023. So yeah, how about you? Where are you at with Cooper?
Yeah, I like Cooper. See a lot of the same things. He's got that long athletic build. He's got 34-inch arms. He's just a long athletic dude that, really, can hold down the middle. He ran a good time, 4.5 140 at 6'2", 230. So, he showed that he has speed. It's a little more promising for his range as they utilize him a little differently with every team he goes for, right? At the next level. So he's got a nice tackle radius. He did show he has some speed. He's an aggressive dude, like you talked about. I really liked the way he could trigger downhill and he can get there in a hurry. The splash play production, like you talked about, 17 tackles for loss this year. Was it 10 sacks? I think you said he had.
Yeah.
That's huge. So he kind of can fill the stat sheet for you. He's a really interesting dude. He did a lot of things. Like you said, he fills the stat columns up, provides value as a blitzer. And, like you said, he wasn't always asked to drop a ton, but you did see the ability. So, there's some promise there too. So, he has skill sets to stay on the field in different ways on third down if teams want to utilize him. He's one of those guys, aggressive dude. Sometimes he overruns his fit. We talked about that with Cedric Gray. I also thought there was times like in the open field, he would come in hot and he would lose his feet. He was just wouldn't chop and break down and square up. It's just like he was just like tunnel vision sometimes. Right. It's just something to, I thought he was feisty taking on blocks, which I liked, but I thought he got stuck at times too. So maybe a little bulk or something in that area. But he was feisty, I thought, overall, which I appreciate that. So it's not easy. I couldn't do it. I know that I can't do much.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think very similar, right? Like he to me was kind of used very similarly to how Cincinnati used Ivan Pace last year, right? In
Mhm.
that kind of
Sure.
pass rush spy
Yep.
role on passing downs, and like similar play style against the run where they're just looking to win by being slippery and fast and shedding those blocks. So
Yep.
as opposed to try to stack and shed, right? But obviously Cooper much taller, bigger than Pace, so different players in that way.
Yep.
But yeah, I gotta love what he brings as a run defender. I think he'll find success in the NFL, like between the tackles with that quickness and slipperiness, and in being able to avoid getting locked up, putting himself in a good position to make plays. And yeah, I'll be interested to see if the NFL views him as an every down linebacker.
Yeah.
I think there's opportunity for that just because he's a natural blitzer and plays
Yep.
that spy pass rusher role well. But for maybe like a team that plays a lot more zone, they could be using him as a drop coverage linebacker, which there is evidence of that he can do it.
Mhm.
It's just less of a sample size, right? So, yeah, I think fit's going to be a big thing. But, well, speaking of fit, let's talk about landing spot. I have him going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Okay.
So
I
obviously,
like
like
that.
this is a team that lost Devin White in the offseason. They brought back Levante David. They have Servassier Dennis, who's much more of a run defender than coverage linebacker. So we'll see there. But I think Cooper is a much better fit in that Devin White role where he'll play a ton of spy and rush the passer and also, be better technique as a tackler. But he has that similar aggressiveness, right? So I think it could be a decent transition there in how they play their game with Cooper hopefully being an upgrade. But I think he's one of those guys that has that day one kind of starting potential, especially in a spot like Tampa Bay over a guy like a KJ Britt or a Servassier Dennis.
Yeah. No, I like that spot. I have Cooper going to Green Bay, which
There it is.
is that hits home for me because I'm a Packer fan.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean I think he's like I said, he's a tall, long, athletic linebacker in Green Bay. I know they have Jeff Hafley coming in now, defensive coordinator, but it seems they have affinity for those long, taller linebackers the way they have been drafting them and picking them up, like Devondre Campbell for agency and Quay and stuff.
Right.
Devondre Campbell's moved on. He didn't necessarily have the best year last year. He was banged up, and I don't think he was too happy with certain things.
Right.
And Quay, he's been up and down, man. I'm not quite sure. I'll be curious to see how things shape up once they, hit OTAs and all that good stuff and what they're saying. I still like Quay and all, but he's been hit and miss. Sometimes he fills his gap. Sometimes he's not sure what he's seeing. Sometimes he's guessing. Tons of ability there, but he could use a running mate like a guy like Cooper to, I think Cooper could be a guy in the middle for us and hold it down. And we're good up front. I think our defensive line, I'm going to turn this into a Packer podcast. I'm sorry, John.
No,
but Isaiah McDuffie, I thought he was our best linebacker last year, to be honest.
Yeah.
When he got consistent play, I thought overall he was just consistently the best. So he played for Hafley, I think, for a year at Boston College anyway. But they need a guy, and I like Cooper, and I think he kind of fits what they've been looking for, and I'm hoping he's there and Hafley likes him too.
Yeah, that would be a fun spot for sure.
Yeah.
I definitely have a Green Bay landing spot on the list here coming up. Kind of a different style of well, maybe not totally different style of linebacker, but we'll see. We'll talk about him in a little bit. But I would be excited, for Cooper there. But yeah, Isaiah McDuffie, you're right. He did play well last year. I think he's earned a shot here to potentially start again, right? So